Hey guys, good morning. Today is, what is today? Today is June 20th, and it is the last week of spring. And so next week we'll start officially summer, which is really exciting. So this is the last week of our spring garden tour series. And we're now at the point in the year where I always have to come out with my root apron and some sort of harvesting bowl. It's still mostly zucchini, but we're starting to get other things. We had a party this weekend, and so we were able to grab a couple things out of the garden, and I was able to make a couple arrangements for the table, which was really lovely. I've never done that before for a party. So let me show you what our garden looks like going into official summer. And this last week of spring, we have been lucky also to have cooler weather, and so that's helped a lot with things just kind of kicking off before it gets too hot here. If you're curious, I am in zone 9B in California, and that basically just tells you about our frost states, which is we don't have very many. We don't have very many nights below freezing here in the wintertime, but we can grow a lot of stuff, which is really cool. It's just that where I am, we also deal with really hot weather, so we get usually 100 degrees in the summertime. This year we've been lucky. We haven't had that quite yet, but we're getting there. So we'll see what happens for the next couple weeks. Anyway, if you're new here, my name is Kira. Feel free to call me Q, and welcome to my garden. So I'm going to start at our usual spot in our blackberry patch, and there is some new stuff there this week. So before we get into the blackberries, which you can see right behind me here, I want to show you this green stalk. This is my strawberry green stalk. It looked really good at the beginning of the season, and I killed everything in it, and now I've been trying to basically nurse it back to health. And so it is starting to come back and look really good. We haven't gotten any strawberries off of it just because, I killed it right when the strawberries would be coming on, but we are starting to get plants again, so I'm really excited about that. So next up on our patio, we have this very long hedge of blackberries that go all the way across our back patio, and these plants, as you can see, are going across the roof also, so they're very, very big, very, very healthy. And the newest thing that's happening this week is the berries are starting to change color. So hopefully this means we will be getting blackberries here pretty soon. Here's another view of them just to kind of give you an idea of how wild these things are. They're going all the way to the roof of our patio, which is pretty cool. But one other thing that we learned about blackberries last year, because we never actually had them before and they came with the house, but we learned that the time to pick the blackberries isn't when they actually turn black, it's when the kind of like shininess of them disappears. And so at first they'll turn black or like a dark purplish bluish color, but they'll still be kind of like shiny looking. And at that point, they're probably still tart or a little bit sour. And so what we learned is you actually wait until that shininess goes away, and then they're really sweet after that. So that's a fun fact. And next to the house, we have a herb bed. I think I forgot to show this on last week's tour just because there's not really much going on with it. It's kind of the same, but here we have a gigantic sage plant that we were leaving big just for looks for the party. And now we're going to come in here and actually start harvesting it and dehydrating a lot of the leaves for later on in the year. But we have a bunch of green onion here that has flowered. You can see up there. And then we have cilantro that has also gone to seed. And we are going to pretty soon here get this for coriander seed. And in that corner, there is a little rosemary plant that we're just kind of letting do its thing. And then in the front here, we have some thyme where it flowered and it was really pretty, and then the flowers started to turn brown. So we picked a lot of the flowers off, and now we're letting it get green again. And then around this, we just have a bunch of pots, and there are potatoes in all of these pots. And the potatoes are flowering. Some of them, they put them in at different times. And, some of them are just coming up. You can see there and there, but this was just kind of an experiment. We had the pots, we had extra potatoes, so we just kind of threw them in the ground. Next up, we have our apricot tree and our peach tree. The peach tree, we still have some fruit on here, and it's about time for us to get all of the rest of this fruit. We've been just kind of doing it slowly. The stuff that we left here, we haven't picked anything in, I want to say, a handful of days, at least 4 or 5 days. And so the fruit that's left is getting bigger. And then there's stuff at the top that we needed a ladder to reach. So there's still a lot of fruit on this peach tree, and a lot of it has actually fallen to the ground in the last couple days, which tells me that we really, really do need to get the rest of the fruit off this tree. But so far we have picked about 13, 14 pounds of peaches off of this tree. So it's been really great. Oh, and for our party, we made this peach lemonade that was amazing. It was a peach sage lemonade. We don't have a recipe. We don't do recipes. We just kind of like taste tested it until it was tasted okay to us. At first it was really sweet to me and I felt like I could see through the walls with how sugary it was, but we just kept tweaking it, and it was a huge hit at the party. So peach sage lemonade, if you want to give that a try. It was a crowd pleaser for us. Here's our grape arch. It's doing really well. If you're new, we have 2 mature grape plants on this side and then one that we potted on this side. And then we built this little arch. It's just a cattle panel held up with T-posts. See if you can see in here. So the grapes are getting to be a pretty good size. Give my hand next to one of these clusters so you can really see. It's really beautiful. And so you can see this thing is covered in grapes, which I'm really excited about. These, we know, on this side turn kind of purple, and you can see it's loaded all the way to the top, and we have a bird's nest up there. We think it's a mockingbird, and so this is a lot of grapes. And then on this side, this is our new plant, and this is the first time we've gotten grapes off of this one, so we don't know what kind, or we don't know what color and stuff these are. I forgot what kind it was. We bought this plant a few years ago and actually had it in a pot for this whole time, so we'll see what those are, but it's very lovely under here. And on the other side of the grape arch, I put a little pumpkin plant in there, and I tried to transplant one. It was an extra one, and it's dead. It's dead already. But so it did not survive. So it was one where the roots were completely disturbed and like all of the dirt fell off when I transplanted it. So I figured it was gonna die, but I wanted to try anyway. So yeah, there's nothing there right now. And then we have some lavender with a very large weed that I always forget to take out. This is a Meyer lemon tree that we had in a pot for a few years and planted here. So it's new. This is our, we hope, is a navel orange tree. So time will tell. But there's a lot more fruit on it this year, which is great. Last year there was nothing on it, or so we thought, until the middle of winter when we found exactly 1 orange on it in the middle of the tree. And so we're hoping this year looks more promising. And then this is a cutie tree. It's a clementine, and the fruit is very small here, but it is starting to get a little bit bigger. You can see there. So they're still itty bitty, but it's doing its thing. Next up, behind all of our garden beds, which are right here, we have a tomato trellis that we put in. So this is a mix of determinants and indeterminates. Down here we have a few determinate Romas, and then it goes into indeterminate sweet cherry tomatoes, super sweet 100s, I think is what they are exactly. And then at the end there, the bigger ones, we have Amish paste. I came through the other day and cleaned up all of these plants and trellised them to the cattle panel and tied them up, and some of them, as you can see here, I just like weaved through and just kind of got them together a little bit. And these plants were a lot taller than I thought they were, which was great. But there's a lot of fruit on them, lots of flowers, and so overall they seem to be doing pretty well. So first up in the back here, we have a gigantic zucchini plant that is very, very happy. And it's at the point now where, let me see if I can show you this. I don't know if you can see this, but the stalk of this plant kind of starts over there and then comes across this way. And so I think it's time for us to try and see if we can stake this plant up, because I've seen people grow them in kind of like a tree formation, just vertically, and I think that's pretty cool, and I've always wanted to try it. This thing is still going very, very strong, and we've been getting massive zucchini off of it pretty much every day, if not every day, every other day. And then our okra is coming in. I took out a plant over here that was covering peppers and stuff like that. It was one we didn't actually plant, and I'll talk about that later, but we have a bunch more peppers that are getting more light. We have some Moulin Rouge zinnias popping through back there that are really pretty. And more little peppers. This one is either a habanada or a scotch, or a sweet bonnet, one of the two. It's a sweet version of a hot pepper. And then I put some bush beans just in this hole right here. We have another okra, purple basil, which is really pretty. I mostly just grow this for the color contrast. We don't really eat it or anything like that. We've tried before and found that it's okay, but we'd rather have regular basil to eat. But this one, I'll just keep growing just because I like the color. And we are starting to get peppers to be a good size, which is really exciting. Here is a Thai basil, which I grow for the culinary purposes, but mostly for the flowers. Pollinators love this stuff. I love this stuff. And this year I've started to put it in bouquets. So it's really pretty. It does wilt up a little bit in bouquets, but then it kind of like perks back up. Then we have another okra plant that's doing really well. These will really take off when it gets really hot for us. But we have some more pepper plants with peppers on them. And I took out a plant over here that was another mystery plant. Oh, my basil is starting to flower. So I gotta do something about that. So the thing about basil, and I'm talking about the kind of like Genovese basil, the kind of culinary basil, is that when it starts to flower, the flavor of it changes and it turns more and more licoricey as the hotter it gets, essentially. And so what you'll want to do is take the flowers, just pinch them off, and you want to do it kind of like where the plant has these nodes that naturally, you can see here that there's kind of like this part where there's a bunch of nodes coming off of one stem. So you want to find one of those. It can be the top one if you want, or you can go further down and just snap it off from there, because what that'll do is it'll slow down the plant from flowering, which will slow down the change in flavor so that you can use it longer. But then it also, by taking it at the nodes, you're making the plant more bushy, because at each one of those little armpit areas, it's going to create more branches. And so I usually try to get it before this, because once it starts to flower, the flavor's already changing. But you know, I didn't see it until right now. So I'm just gonna take some of these off, and hopefully it'll mean we get to use this basil for a little bit longer. The other thing too about our basil this year is something was pecking at it or eating it, which I'm not used to. I'm used to basically just nothing touching our basil. And so these plants took a while to take off in the first place. And so that's kind of a bummer to, when they first start to actually come up and get to a good size, to have them flower like this. But it's okay. It's part of gardening. So now I have all this basil to take into the house. Right next to this basil that we just kind of pick the flowers off of, I have another gigantic zucchini plant with what looks like a very ready zucchini. Oh yeah, this guy was smaller yesterday. So normally I will take my snippers and at least cut a piece of this off and then twist for a cleaner cut. But I don't have my snippers on me, so we're gonna twist and see what happens. Sometimes this works, sometimes it takes a little bit of the fruit off. Well, this one worked. Perfect. So if you twist the zucchini instead of just flat out pulling it, you have a better chance of getting it cut on the stem instead of in the fruit. And what I found too is sometimes with twisting, if you twist closer to the plant, that helps too. Next up, we have this glorious bushy marigold that hasn't bloomed yet, but it has made a very strong comeback. This got destroyed by birds at the beginning of the season, and so I'm excited to see it looking this bushy and healthy. And then we have a cucumber that is, you know, making its own way, and a beautiful amaranth. I always show this one because I'm obsessed with it. Over here we have our cucumber jungle, and this one is an Armenian white. And then on that side of the trellis we have what I think is a Telegraph Improved, and they've just been going wild and crazy, and I love it. Let's see if we can find anything in here. This is kind of spiky because I'm not wearing gloves right now, but I always start at the bottom because that's where most of the ones I miss are. I don't see any on these plants. Let's see over here. Oh, yeah, so back there, it's not ready yet, but back there, you can see, is a cucumber. See if I can get that to focus. There you go. So back there is a cucumber. That'll probably be ready in a couple days. We did get our first 2 cucumbers off of, I want to say the plant on this side, so not the one we're looking at just now. But we got our first 2 cucumbers of the season the other day, and we were actually able to eat them, which was really exciting. So we've tried cucumbers in the past. I want to say it was 2 years ago. Yeah, because last year was kind of our, it doesn't really count, garden year because we were moving and everything was crazy. But the year before that, I tried to grow cucumbers, and we grew a ton of cucumbers. It was a lot, and we couldn't eat a single one of them. They were incredibly bitter and gross. It was like biting into a pill. It was so nasty. And we tried to talk to local farmers and get advice and all this stuff, and we just could not get it right. So we were given advice of, you know, more water and all sorts of things, like different soil. I think it was our soil, a mixture of our soil being really bad, and we just never got the water right. But they were terrible. And so the whole season we were picking cucumbers and trying them, and they were all disgusting. So it was really exciting the other day when we picked 2 cucumbers out of this garden, and we were able to eat both of them. And these plants are also just loaded up with flowers, so hopefully we get more cucumbers here before it gets too hot. And this is that Moulin Rouge zinnia that is beautiful and is doing exactly what I wanted. I wanted them to kind of like pop out on both sides of the trellis, and it's doing exactly that. These are our experiment sweet peas. We use these in our soil test, and I just planted them here. I think what I'm gonna do, because the little plants, the plants here for this trellis are still very small, I think what I'm gonna do is leave these and let them dry out so that I can use them for seed for next year. Because these other plants need a little bit more time. You can see there's more sweet peas right here with other plants underneath. This is like a butternut squash, and I think there's a sugar pie pumpkin over there. So they're really small. They only went in like a few weeks ago, and they're not being shaded or disturbed at all by these sweet peas yet. So I think I'm just gonna leave them for as long as we can. This is one of my favorite areas of the garden because it's just so filled out and lovely, and the cucumbers have gone crazy. They've decided that they want to live on all of the trellises, and so they're over here too. But here we have, this is a Senora zinnia. This is the first time I've ever grown these, and they are beautiful. And this is what I wanted. I wanted just pops of color coming out of the cucumbers and different viney things that we had. Oh, this is exciting. So let me show you this. Our straw flowers opened. Last week I tried to show you the sound on these that they make, and it didn't come through the microphone, so let me try again. So I don't know if you can hear that. I won't know until I edit this video, but it sounds really papery, which is really cool. And then there's a really beautiful orange one back here too. got the idea of growing these straw flowers. I've never grown these before. I got the idea from watching a bunch of cut flower videos and flower farm videos over the winter time. And this was one of the flowers that, one, does really well in hot areas, and then also people use for dry flowers because they essentially keep their color really well when they're dry. And I thought that they were actually a really pretty dry flower. Most dry flowers I actually don't like, but these I thought were really pretty, and so I wanted to try them out. And I like them. I think they're really cool. Next up here, this is an Armenian white cucumber, and you can see here they're kind of like a pale color for the fruit. And I did see a cucumber down here. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. So there is this guy right here. And I could go pick that, but I think because these do really well in hot climates, and when we tried them before, it didn't really matter how big they got, they still kind of tasted pretty good. I think I'm gonna let that one go for another couple days. But I think, let's see if there's anything else in here. I don't see anything. I think Andrew said there was another different kind of cucumber. This is the plant. This is a Persian gherkin. And this is the plant where we got the two. Oh yeah, there's something down there. So I got my root apron, I got my bowl, but I didn't bring my snippers. It's a rookie mistake. I definitely know better than this. But this is a Persian gherkin, and this is the plant where we got the two cucumbers a couple days ago. And I see two down here. Let me see if I can grab these. Oh, they're so spiky. I'm not gonna do this. Let's pause for a second while I act like an adult and go get my snippers. Okay, let's try this again. Oh yeah. So let's get this guy. I'm actually gonna put on a glove too. Here's one. Here's two. And did I see a second one? Oh no, those are peppers. And those are pretty good looking peppers in there. Let's see. Okay, that's all I see for right now. So anything else will surprise me later on. Okay, that's exciting. So we got two cucumbers. We'll very cautiously taste them, and let's get back to the tour. I was digging into this cucumber plant here. Look at this sidebar. I get distracted by flowers. This is a junior yellow sunflower, and it's started blooming, I want to say a couple days ago, and it is so pretty. Look at her. But anyway, what I wanted to show you is while I was digging around for the cucumbers, I saw peppers back here in these plants, and those, let's see. Oh, here we go. Do it from this side. So you can see it's a good amount of peppers on here, which is really great. And I'm hoping that these will be shaded enough where they won't get sun scalded too bad. But things are starting to look good. And then we have a couple more peppers. We have chamomile that I keep forgetting to do anything with. And then we have this guy. So let me pause and talk about this for a second. So this plant right here, we did not put here. It came, I'm assuming, in the soil drop that we did. But anyway, this is the plant that I've been talking about every week. We're not sure what it is. We think it's some sort of nightshade. We tried Google, we tried plant apps, and all we got was, it's a nightshade, which we figured out on our own. But a lovely, lovely viewer told me in a video, I think it was last week, or I saw it last week. I saw the comment last week. But they told me that this is a pea eggplant. And they were telling me that their sister grows it, and it's really good in like Asian cuisine, or very popular in Asian cuisine, and all of that kind of stuff. And so I looked it up, and that looks to be exactly what it is. So first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for telling me what this plant was. And I looked it up, it was pretty cool. And so the thing is I had taken out two of them, the two biggest ones, the day before I saw the comment, just because they were crowding out so many different things that we did plant and that we did want, like peppers and things like that. But I left two of them. This was one of the ones that I left. And so on those bigger ones, I was able to actually see what the fruit looked like. So the flowers and the fruit and everything. And it looks exactly like a pea eggplant. So we're going to try it. We eat a lot of Asian food. Andrew's Chinese. And so we're going to give it a go. We might not like it, but it's a cool free plant. We didn't put it here. And this one, at least, isn't in the way really of other things that we were trying to grow, of our high value stuff that I spent a lot of time babying. So anyway, pea eggplant. I'll keep you posted on how this grows and how it tastes and all of that kind of stuff. But again, thank you. This is why I love, 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 love the power of gardeners coming together over the internet, because we never would have figured this out without you. So thank you. So this is our next aisleway that we're going to go down. And I'm just backing up here because I want to give you the full effect of it. I just think it's so pretty now that stuff is starting to climb up the trellises. It's just magical in here. And so we're going to start on this side. So this is my noodle bean trellis, and we haven't gotten any beans yet, but this thing is growing wild and crazy. And as you can see here, we still have tendrils that are kind of in the walkways. We have been coming out multiple times a day to tendrils that were not there before and putting up new ones and all of that kind of stuff to get it to climb the trellis. And for the most part, it's doing really well. And now these are significantly taller than me. So they're about, let's see, I want to say that's probably like 7 feet up there, maybe 8. I'd have to really measure, but anyway, they are starting to get to the top of the trellis on both sides, which is really great. And so pretty soon, hopefully, we will have noodle beans that hang down in the middle. And this is a gigantor sunflower. This is an autumn beauty sunflower. It hasn't bloomed at all yet, but I'm actually really happy about that because I would love for it to bloom later in the season, which I think it's supposed to do anyway. But this one was one where I put a seed in. It has multiple places where it looks like heads might come off of it, and so I'm really excited to see this one later in the season. But it's huge. It's at least 6.5 feet tall. It goes all the way up there. And back down here, this is our dahlia that bloomed the first bloom last week, and it's starting to, as you can see, to get more and more flowers, which is really great. Let me come around this way. So these flowers are a couple days old, but it gives you an idea of what they look like. They're really pretty. I really do like them. This is the first dahlia to bloom, and all of my dahlias went through hell because they were eaten by birds and just nibbled down to nothing, including this one. But this one's the first one to make a comeback. And we have another pepper plant right there. And then this is our Blue Lake pole beans, which they look a little weird. We are going to start doing a fertilizer on all of these things, hopefully, if we can. That's our plan. I can't say that we are definitely going to do anything at this point because summer's going to be crazy, but it's our goal. And this is the other side where we have the Senora zinnias and the straw flowers poking through. This is our honey nut squash. They've gotten really big actually in the last week. So that's at least half the size that they're gonna get if all goes well. We've had some actually ripen this size before, but they do get about double this size and then they turn a really pretty golden yellow orange color. But this plant looks pretty good. And then this is the other pea eggplant plant that I left. Oh, you can actually see here's what the pea eggplants look like. So this is what the fruit looks like. So it's pretty cool to finally know what this plant is. On the end here we have yellow squash. Let me take this guy off. Oh, actually, no, I'm gonna leave that another day and let it get a little bit bigger. We have another honey nut over here. You can see there's fruit here, and then there's bigger fruit down here. And this plant is significantly smaller than the other one, but it still seems to be doing okay. I would like to see more green than this, but still doing all right. This is our massive yellow squash plant, and we've been getting stuff off of this one every few days. It's slowed down a little bit in the last couple days here, but there's still a lot going on in here. There's a couple fruit that are forming. There's one down there that will probably be ready tomorrow. So it's still doing a lot of stuff, but it's a very healthy plant. This year my squash has done better than any other year. We've always managed to have maybe like one healthy plant that was able to pull through, but for the most part, we've had a lot of sick plants, a lot of stuff that kind of produced in spite of how bad it looked and all of that. And this year, so far, all of the plants look really, really good. And so part of that has given us a zucchini problem, which is a great problem to have. We have reached the part of the season where yesterday I spent just like 30 minutes shredding and measuring out zucchini so that we could freeze it. And I got, what was it? 14 cups of zucchini just from just a couple plants or a couple fruit. And that's just the beginning. And so now we are at the point where we're starting to shred it, measure it out, and freeze it for winter zucchini bread and, you know, hiding it in different dishes over the winter time and all of that kind of stuff. But it's a great problem to have still. It's better to have way too many than not enough. There's that zucchini. We have some sweet alyssum right underneath it. And then we have another Moulin Rouge zinnia. And this is where we planted another squash. This is a butternut squash. And this is the other half of the noodle bean trellis. And so you can see they've been pretty crazy, and we've just been trying to tuck them back to the trellis on both sides because they've been going wild on wherever they want to go, which I actually kind of like. But we are trying to still train them up for right now. And then here's the other side of that trellis. I have two flags here. Basically, in all the places where there are flags now, I just put a random cut mix of zinnia seeds just to like be done with it. And whatever comes up, comes up. And so we have some zinnias potentially coming up there. We have another Thai basil in the corner here and a marigold. And then peppers all down this row. And then this is our hot pepper corner down here. And yeah, everything looks pretty good. There is a junior yellow sunflower that I put in as a start right here. And this guy's pretty done, so I think I'm going to take that out pretty soon. So this is an area that is completely new, as this was not here last week. And this is what we are now calling our pumpkin patch. So what I did was I had extra plants in the beds in some places on the arches, and I just, because more than one came up, I always like to see if I can transplant stuff first. And so what I did was I took all the extras and put them in here. This side here is sugar pie pumpkin, and then back there is, those two are Howden pumpkins, which are a bigger variety. And I stuck them in here. Looks like only one of them died. There was one right here, which is great. I thought more would die. And I put these in 2 days ago, and I'll continue to baby them with water. If you can get squash past the first like couple days, they're probably gonna make it. And so it looks like some of these are gonna make it. And then right in front of our pumpkin patch, we have our cut flower garden. And so we'll go through these 3 8-foot beds here next. On the end here of the flower garden, I have some 3 Roma plants, and I do need to kind of trellis these a little bit more. This is the first time I've tried Florida weave, and it's going a little wild and crazy. So I need to put another set of string on here. But these have lots and lots of fruit on them, which I'm really happy about. So there's a lot in here. which is pretty exciting. And then our cosmos are still doing really well. It's really cool how tall these are. But I've been really enjoying these for the few bouquets that I've made. And then once they get like this and they are, torn apart a little bit like this, I've just been snipping them off. But there's still a lot of really pretty ones that are intact that I'll use these for bouquets and stuff like that. Looks like these straw flowers are about to open pretty soon here. Our larkspur came back. So this is the second blooming that I've had of this larkspur, which I've never grown before. This was a free plant that we got at an event, and so I'm excited to see it again. This was the first flower we had bloom this year. Over here, we have these beautiful, like buttery looking snapdragons. They remind me of buttery popcorn, and I love these white with a little bit of yellow snapdragons. Over here in this bed, we have more snapdragons that are kind of coming along. These are struggling a little bit more. You can see they're drying out at the top and stuff. So I'm not sure what's happening here, but it's probably just, too hot for them, which is totally fine. I'm excited about the amount of snapdragons we did get. And then I have more cosmos over here. And then my zinnias are starting to come in, which is great. So these are Moulin Rouge and purple giant purple. And this is a Senora zinnia. So I have trouble telling this one and this one apart, but having them right next to each other makes it a lot easier. So this one is the purple. That's the Senora. That's a lot pinker than I thought it was. That's really pretty. I've never grown this before either. So this is a new zinnia to me, and it's like highlighter pink. That's really cool. And then next to them we have our golden nugget tomatoes, which are starting to ripen, and they're pretty tasty. Let's see. This one right here is a ripe one, and we've pulled maybe 4 tomatoes off of this so far, and they're pretty good. Here in the next bed is our best snapdragon patch, and I'm obsessed with everything that's happening here. How pretty all of that is. And then on this side is the death corner. And this is where I had a bunch of dahlias and a bunch of sunshine marigolds, and I think I had basils right here. And they all died. I replanted some of this with zinnias just to see what happens, but everything in this corner didn't make it. This is one of those mixed zinnias, and that is a beautiful orange. I love that. I've never actually had this one before, even though I've grown that mixed pack before. So one thing I've realized about myself while growing cut flowers is I like them so much in the garden sometimes that I don't actually ever cut them. And like I love how these are all growing together, and I love the different colors and all of that kind of stuff. And so I actually have a trouble cutting flowers. I didn't know this about myself, but here we are. Yeah, I've made a couple bouquets. Like I think I've made 3 this season, but not a ton. And so I'm gonna try and get in the habit, especially the next couple weeks here, because I also know it is better to, keep cutting your flowers because then you get more flowers. So in the next couple weeks, I think I'm going to experiment with just like every weekend or once a week, just making myself another small bouquet for the house, because I do really like we buy flowers from the farmers market and all that stuff, and the whole point of this was for me to get free cut flowers. But it's just something about it is so hard to come out here and actually cut them. I don't know. Does anyone else struggle with that? Like actually cutting the flowers in your garden? But random. You learn new things about yourself every year, I guess. Here's the snapdragons from the other side. I don't think I've ever shown this, but look how pretty they are. Yeah, it's just so hard to cut. I love this kind of wine colored one. That one's really pretty. Okay, so now we are going into the other 3 16-foot beds, starting with this gigantic zucchini plant. And speaking of gigantic zucchini, this was not this big 2 days ago or even yesterday. This is what I mean. I miss them sometimes. Oh, yep, see, broke that one. So sometimes when you try and twist it without cutting it first, it'll do that to the fruit, but that's okay. So the thing about these three 16-foot beds on this side of the garden is they got planted out about 2 weeks after the 16-foot beds on the other side of the cut flower garden. And that was because we were still working on this side, essentially. These were beds that we built last year that we had here. And so we were working on building out the other side and filling it and all that kind of stuff first. But a couple factors here. One, everything went in about 2 weeks later. Two, this side gets significantly more shade in the morning and especially in the evening than the other side. And then the last thing is these beds are not completely filled with new soil. They were topped off with, I want to say probably like 6 inches of the new soil was just put on top. And so all of those are factors on into why these plants are just growing a little slower. They all look really good still, honestly. Well, there's a couple things that aren't great, but for the most part, this side of the garden looks really, really good still, and I'm happy with its progress. But those are just the things that are making it grow a little bit slower. All of that being said, I'm really excited to see what happens when it gets really hot here, when we have, every day in the 100 degrees, because with that side getting so much sun, I think things like the cucumbers over there are really going to suffer. And, there might be peppers and tomatoes that get sun scald and like all of that kind of stuff. And so that's when I'm really curious to see what happens on this side, because this has a lot of the same stuff in it. And I think that this side will then do better later in the season than that other side, just because of the amount of sun that it gets. We'll see if that's how it actually plays out. I have no idea, because we've never had this whole garden before. We've only had this side before. So we'll see what happens. But I think that that's how it's going to go, and I am interested to experiment with it more. Next to the zucchini plant, we have more peppers. So these peppers are smaller than the other ones. They're just starting to flower. And well, some of them are fruiting on this side, but for the most part, they are a little bit smaller, but still doing really well, considering the plants that I put in the ground were not very healthy. They're all kind of making a comeback. These are two tomatillo plants. So there's one gigantor one here, and then there's another one that has actually gotten a lot bigger in the last week right here. And hopefully they will pollinate each other and we will have tomatillos for the very first time. This is a mix of bush beans, so it's called trio bush beans. So they're green, yellow, and purple, and it's just a mix of, different ones that I used to just fill in gaps that we had earlier in the season. More peppers, and then here are some of our tomato plants. I need to actually look at the tag and see which ones these are. So these 4 tomato plants here are actually super sweet 100 cherry tomatoes. I think I've been saying in tours that they're Amish paste, but I just looked at the tag. They're super sweet 100s. Yeah, now I can tell because they actually have fruit on them now. Those are definitely cherry tomatoes. We love these. They're amazing, and I'm excited to have cherry tomatoes again. We didn't really have these last year. We tried and the plants just really struggled, so we didn't get anything off of them last year. So hopefully this year is better. Over on this trellis, we have another very small Armenian cucumber. This one was one that I transplanted over here, and it took off. You can see it's flowering and stuff. So it's just like a little bit behind, but once it starts to get those tendrils on it, they grow really quickly. And then we have a zinnia here in the middle. This one is a Senora zinnia. And then we have a sugar pie pumpkin, which is from a seed I saved from a different pumpkin I grew. So excited to see what happens with that. Over here, we have more Blue Lake pole beans. These are newer, so these got actually put in a couple weeks ago. Then we have a lovely looking basil. See, this one hasn't started to really flower yet, and I've been pretty good about pinching the tops. So you go to these little nodes down here. I usually go to the second one and just like pull it off. But this one I've been pinching pretty regularly, and so it's bushing out. And then on the other side here, these are more Blue Lake pole beans. And you can see how these leaves look compared to the ones on the other side that are a little bit curly. This is how they're supposed to look. We have some noodle beans over here, and just more beans in general. In the middle here we have a bunch of different kinds of peppers. So the squatty one here is a habanada that I saved from seed. I think the rest of these, I don't have tags on all of them, but they're either Italian peppers that I saved from seed or they're Edgevarsky peppers that are new to us. But this guy, you can see, has a pretty good sized pepper on it. These are new plants that we put in a couple weeks ago. So pumpkins and different squash and things like this. Like that. This one is a sugar pie pumpkin. And then this one is a honey nut. This was the last honey nut seed that we had, and it actually grew, which is great. And then here you can see I did another green bush bean filler just to use up some space. These are the 2 tomato plants that I got from the farmer's market. This one is a Hungarian heart, and then that one is a yellow brandywine. This Hungarian heart has been getting pretty sick, and I've pruned it a little bit, but there's flowers on it, but there's no fruit. So I don't know what's up with that. But then this yellow brandywine is doing pretty well actually. And you can see it's just getting more and more fruit on it. This is actually more fruit than I thought was on here. And there's another one there. There's more down there. So it's doing really well. Next to the tomato, we have a couple pepper plants that are doing really well. And let's see. Oh yeah, there's little peppers on there. I don't know if you can see those. Those little guys. Eggplants are doing okay. They're not flowering or anything yet, but they came out here really small and pretty sick actually. And then here is probably another honey nut. Yeah, that looks like a honey nut. So this one is starting to flower, which is really good. Or starting to fruit, which is really good. Then we have the watermelon. Doesn't look like there's any fruit on this yet, but we do have the flowers. This is a yellow watermelon. We have more peppers and then another yellow squash down here. We did more bush beans here and they never came up, and so I've just been trying to water this more. But if this spot ends up empty for the rest of the season, that's okay. It's only one little spot. We have a beautiful zinnia. Look at that. I love all of the different layers on this. It's like a cupcake. We got some junior sunflowers that look like they're gonna actually have a ton of heads on them. There's a lot on there. So excited for those later in the season. We got another little watermelon, another pretty healthy basil that I've been picking off of, and it hasn't flowered yet, so that's really good. This back here looks like it's another dahlia actually. We'll see what happens with that. And then this is another watermelon that we just put in. We have a bunch more in the middle here. We have a bunch more peppers and then 2 more little eggplants. And here, these are Amish paste tomatoes. These are super scrawny because they were shaded out by sweet peas that we had here earlier in the season. But now I've been able to kind of get them to the trellis, and now I'm starting to weave them to the trellis because I would love to grow these up the arch. So that's what's happening here. And then I came in the front here and just put more zinnia seeds. So that's what these flags are. And then on the other side, we have a zucchini plant. This one's doing pretty well. I mean, it's small. It doesn't get a ton of sun, but we have gotten fruit off of it. And those are the peppers that I just talked about, and sunflowers, and that's all of this bed. This is our second in-ground tomato trellis. And I was gonna say that all of these Romas are flowering, but they haven't fruited yet. But there, we are starting to get tomatoes. So I came out the other day, I think it was like 2 days ago, and cleaned up all of these too. And I really just cleaned the bottoms on these and then just tucked them into the trellis to get them to kind of grow up the middle of the trellis more. All of these plants are doing pretty well. They look healthy, they look good, so I'm pretty happy with them. And then at the end of this trellis here, we have one of our apple trees. We have 3 apple trees total. This is one of them. And underneath it, we have borage that has really just exploded. So looks like there's some kind of deficiency here on the leaves, but for the most part, this thing has gone crazy. So I'm not gonna lie, the fuzziness creeps me out a little bit. I don't know why. It kind of gives me a little bit of the heaves. I think it's just because it reminds me of like spider legs, and I'm very, very not into spiders. But yeah, I don't know. It's also kind of pretty in a weird way. I really like the color of the flowers. And see, it's like this fluorescent bluish purple, which is really pretty. People say that you can eat these, the flowers and stuff, and I'm not putting that in my mouth ever because I can't do fuzzy. I'm very much a texture person, but yeah, still pretty cool plant. And then at the end here, we got some extra snapdragons and a pumpkin. So that's it. We did it, guys. We made it through every week of spring and did a garden tour, which when I set this goal, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it. And I think I might have missed 1 week, but I still count that as a win to do an entire season and do a tour every single week. Even if some of those tours came a little bit later, still did it. So I'm counting it as a win. I mentioned this in my last couple tours that I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the summer one. I'm probably going to have to switch it up. I don't think the weekly things are going to happen. I'm going to try as often as I can. It might be a monthly thing. It might just be no schedule at all of just when I can show the garden. And so bear with me for that huge amount of life change that's happening here while that is going on. But I still do want to document this garden, especially since it's the first year that we've had this full garden here at this house. So we'll see how much content I can get out about it. But just so you know, and just so you have a heads up, there's probably not going to be weekly. And even if it is weekly for a while, I might have to miss a couple weeks. But anyway, we have our haul for the day, which is pretty good, actually. They're starting to get a little bit bigger, which is nice. And it's starting to be more than just zucchini, which is nice. So thank you for joining me today. I hope that you are having a wonderful day in your garden. I would love to hear about it. If you are growing on a balcony, if you're growing in a couple pots, if you're growing on acreage, which is my dream, that'd be so cool. I want to hear about all of it. So like I said earlier, we were figuring out those pea eggplants. It's so great that there is a gardening community on YouTube to learn from. And I learned how to do all of this, everything that I know how to do, I learned on YouTube, and I learned from watching other people's garden tours and videos and all of that. And I love that people are sharing it. So anyway, thank you again for joining me. I hope you have a good rest of your day and happy gardening. I'll see you next time.